Well, joy to the world again. We've been making our way through the Gospel of St. Mark, and we're now at the 14th chapter, and there's just 3 more chapters to go with it. And again, to remind anybody who's just joining in for the first time, Mark's Gospel is written like a 2-act play. The Gospel about Jesus the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus, the Anointed One. Who is he? The Son of God. It's like, that rock opera, Jesus Christ, Superstar. Or it's like, even in our time at this second, Joseph Biden, President of these United States. Now we're at the Passion, the crucifixion. It's mind-boggling when you think about it, that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word took flesh in the womb of the Virgin, and she brought forth a male child and laid him in a manger, which is the feeding box. And when you look at that baby in the manger, you're looking at the eternal God. And 33 years later, more or less, we will see him crucified, bleeding to death, dying, and then this impossible miracle, he rises from the dead. And everybody who confesses that Jesus is Lord and believes in their heart that he is risen from the dead, will themselves rise from the dead, their bodies, that is, on the last day. So, the passion and resurrection of Jesus. It was 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the chief priests and the scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus by some trick and have him put to death. For they said, it must not be during the festivities, or there would be a disturbance among the people. Let it sink in, please. Let it sink in. Here is the eternal God. Whoever sees Jesus sees the Father. And they are looking for a way to arrest him and put him to death. Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper. He was at dinner when a woman came in with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the ointment on his head. Some who were there said to one another indignantly, why this waste of ointment? Ointment like this could have been sold for over 300 denarii and the money given to the poor. And they were angry with her. But Jesus said, leave her alone. Why are you upsetting her? What she has done for me is one of the good works. You have the poor with you always, and you can be kind to them whenever you want, whenever you wish, but you will not always have me. We will not always have Christ in the flesh. She has done what was in her power to do. She has anointed my body beforehand for its burial. I tell you solemnly, whenever throughout the world, all the world, the good news is proclaimed, what she has done will be told also in remembrance of her. So we remember Mary of Bethany, who anointed the feet of Jesus with oil. You see here rather clearly that Jesus knows exactly what's going on. He's on his way to crucifixion. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, approached the chief priests with an offer to hand Jesus over to them. They were delighted to hear it and promised to give him money. and he looked for a way of betraying him when the opportunity should occur. Now, poor old Judas, I'm not being disrespectful, he was a minor player, and Jesus had come into the world to die, period. And when it's saddened by Judas, in my own way, I look for, I hope for Judas to be saved. I really do. Now, it doesn't look good. Jesus said about Judas, it would be better if he was never born. And yet there's something in us. You know, the Irish have this proverb, and they say there's mercy between the bridge and the water. There's mercy between the top of the building and the pavement. Maybe Judas, as he hung by the neck, maybe he asked for forgiveness. Jesus had to die anyway. And he came to die for all sinners. So I'm hoping, that's me, I'm hoping for Judas to be in heaven. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was sacrificed, his disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" Now the Passover has to do with when the Jews were slaves in Egypt 1,000 years before, or more or less 1,000 years, that on the night of the Passover, the angel of death passed through the land of Egypt and put to death all the firstborn males in the land of Egypt who were enslaving the Jewish people. But he passed over the houses where the blood marked the doorposts and the lintels of the homes of God's chosen people, the Jews. So that's the Passover. Ultimately, our Passover has to do with Jesus passed from death to life. He passed from the earthly Jerusalem to the heavenly Jerusalem. And he brought somebody with him when he passed over. He brought a death row criminal. We give him the name Dismas. So that's our dream as well, that we will pass over with Jesus into eternal life. So they're celebrating the Passover. Now Jesus is the new Passover, passing from death to life. So he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go into the city, and you will meet a man carrying a pitcher of water." And I think one of those zodiac signs might be based on this, the dawning of the age of Aquarius, the pitcher of water. Follow him and say to the owner of the house where he enters, "The master says, where is my dining room in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples? He will show you a large upper room furnished with couches all prepared. Make the preparations for us there." The disciples set out and went into the city and found everything as he had told them and prepared the Passover. Again, keep it in mind, please, all the time. Our destiny is to pass over from earth to eternal life, from death to life. The treachery of Judas is foretold. When evening came, he arrived with the 12, and while they were at table eating, Jesus said, "I tell you solemnly, one of you is about to betray me, one of you eating with me." They were distressed and asked him, one after another, "Not I, surely?" He said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who is dipping into the same dish with me." You ever dipped into the same dish with somebody? So here is Judas dipping into the same dish with Jesus. It is one of the 12, one who is dipping into the same dish with me. Yes, the Son of Man is going to his fate, as the scriptures say he will. But alas for that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Better for that man if he had never been born. Again, I must say, touches my soul, you know. Judas was a human being like ourselves. And it doesn't look good, but I'm still hopeful. We have a stained glass window of Judas at Queen of Peace Church in the midst of the 12 apostles. And Judas is clutching a money bag. And in Michelangelo's famous Last Supper, you know, the 12 apostles around the table with Jesus. And if you look closely at the group, looking at the picture this way, on Jesus's right, there is John, the beloved, Peter, the first pope, and Judas. And look more closely at the picture, Judas is grabbing a money bag in his hand, and he overturns the salt cellar. You're not worth your salt. And Peter is leaning over Judas's shoulder to say to John, ask him which one it is, and he has a knife in his hands. The hothead is going to kill whoever is going to betray Jesus. And later that same night, Peter took out his sword and cut somebody's ear off. Yes, the Son of Man is going to his fate, as the scriptures say he will. But alas for that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Better for that man if he'd never been born. And as they were eating, he took some bread. And when he had said the blessing, he broke it and gave it to them. Take it, he said, this is my body. Then he took a cup, and when he had returned thanks, he gave it to them, and all drank from it. And he said to them, this is my blood, the blood of the covenant, which is to be poured out for many. I tell you solemnly, I shall not drink any more wine until the day I drink the new wine in the kingdom of God. Now, I encourage me and you to hear what Jesus said. He said, with a piece of bread in his hands, he said, take it, this is my body. He didn't say this is a symbol of my body, or this is a sign of my body. This is my body. Christ can give himself to us under the appearances of a piece of bread. Mystery of mystery. Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, but they died nonetheless. Whoever eats this bread, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, will live forever. And then he took the chalice, as you heard. I shall not take this is my blood, he said, the blood of the new covenant. Covenant is marriage, the blood of the new marriage. Kovenio, to bring together, which is to be poured out for many. I tell you solemnly, I shall not drink any more wine until the day I drink the new wine in the kingdom of God. In the marriage rituals among the Jews at the time of Christ, like for instance, when Joseph was proposing to Mary, who was to be the mother of Christ, he didn't speak to her that I know of, but what he did do was to take a cup of wine and bring it to her. And she knew what it meant. And if she takes the cup of wine and drinks from it, they are engaged to be married. She's saying yes. And bear in mind that back then, engagement had the same binding force as marriage. In other words, they are married at that moment. Then what happens next is Joseph goes back to his village to prepare a bridal chamber, to build a house, if you like, for Mary, his beloved. And Mary, for her part, every time she appears in public in her own village, wears a veil over her face like the married women did, because she is married. And when she went to bed at night, she always kept a light burning by her bedside, an oil lamp, I presume, burning by her bedside, because she didn't know when her bridegroom would come back for her. It could be in the middle of the night. It could be 6 months later. It could be a year later. And so, and when Joseph had prepared the house, and it was right, and his parents approved of it, Joseph would get permission to go back to Mary's village and bring his wife home. Now, watch the behavior of Jesus here. He behaves like the bridegroom. He said, take this, all of you, and drink from it. And by drinking from it, we are the bride of Christ. The church is the bride of Christ. And look at he went away. He went away because the very same day he was dead on the cross. And he had warned them earlier. He said, I go to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house, there's many mansions. So it's a marriage thing, the Last Supper. And when they asked him when he was coming back, he said, only the Father knows that the Lord will return, Jesus will return at the sound of the archangel's trumpet, like the shofar. And he will gather his elect from the four winds. That's going on at every single Mass. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again in glory soon. After Psalms had been sung, they left for the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, you will all lose faith, for the scripture says, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. However, after my resurrection, I shall go before you to Galilee. Peter said, even if all lose faith, I will not. Peter's the tough guy. He thinks, I'll never lose faith in you, Jesus. I'll never betray you. And Jesus said to him, I tell you solemnly, this day, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will have disowned me 3 times. The rooster crows at the break of day. Before that even happens, the break of day is the resurrection. Peter would have denied him 3 times. But he repeated still more earnestly, if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And they all said the same. And every last one of them ran away that night when they arrested him at the Garden of Gethsemane. They came to a small estate called Gethsemane, which means olive crush, the name itself. Now Jesus is going to be crushed. And Jesus said to his disciples, stay here while I pray. Then he took Peter and James and John with him. These were the same 3, Peter, James, and John, who went up the mountain with Jesus earlier when Jesus was transfigured and became brighter than the sun. They knew. So he took Peter, James, and John with him. And a sudden fear came over him and great distress. Then he said to them, my soul is sorrowful to the point of death. Wait here and keep awake. And you and I are to wait here on the planet Earth and to keep awake for the second coming. And again, we're not woke. Wake here. Wait here and stay awake. And going on a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, if it were possible, this hour might pass him by. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, but let it be as you, not I, would have it. He came back and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Have you not the strength to keep awake 1 hour? You should be awake and praying, not to be put to the test. And we are to be awake and praying as we wait for the Christ to come in glory. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more, he came back and found him sleeping. Their eyes were so heavy, and they could find no answer for him. He came back a third time and said to them, "You can sleep on now and take your rest. It's all over." Jesus had said yes to the crucifixion. It's all over. He had prayed the Father, "Let this chalice pass away from me." Remember, the chalice is the marriage cup. He makes a marriage between mankind and God. The hour has come. Now the Son of Man is to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us go. My betrayer is close at hand. Now, again, I want to say something about Judas here. If there was no Judas, Jesus was going to be led to the slaughter anyway. Anyway, the prophet Isaiah said about him, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, like a sheep before his shearers, he was silent, not opening his mouth, 600 years before it happened. Even while he was still speaking, one of the 12 came up with a number of men armed with swords and clubs, sent by the chief priests and the scribes. And now the traitor had arranged a signal for them. "The one I kiss," he had said, "he is the man. Take him in charge, and see he is well guarded when you lead him away." So when the traitor came, he went straight up to Jesus and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The others seized him and took him in charge. Then one of the bystanders, this is the hothead again, Peter, drew his sword and struck out at the high priest's servant and cut off his ear, the first pope. Then Jesus spoke. "Am I a brigand," he said, "a criminal, that you had to set out to capture me with swords and clubs? I was among you teaching in the temple day after day, and you never laid hands on me. But this is to fulfill the scriptures." And they all deserted him and ran away. They all deserted him and ran away. A young man who followed him had nothing on but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the cloth in their hands and ran away naked. I don't know who the young man was, but it could have been the future Mark, who was a disciple of St. Paul. And it's possible that Mark's parents owned the vineyard, Gethsemane. And it's possible that Mark, sleeping in his home in the vineyard, heard the commotion in the vineyard and came out to see what was going on. And it was dressed in a night shift, because we see here they grabbed it and he ran away naked. But I don't know. Who's the young man? They led Jesus off to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes assembled there. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the high priest's palace, and was sitting with the attendants, warming himself at the fire. Now he has a betrayal already under his belt, but there's more. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus on which they might pass the death sentence, but they could not find any. Innocent man. Several indeed brought false evidence against him, but their evidence was conflicting. Some stood up and submitted this false evidence against him. We heard him say, "I will destroy this temple made by human hands, and in 3 days build another, not made with human hands." Now what Jesus had actually said to them was, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rebuild it. I will rise from the dead." But they twisted that as well. But even on this point, their evidence was conflicting. The high priest then stood up before the whole assembly and put this question to Jesus. "Have you no answer to that? What is this evidence these men are bringing against you?" But he was silent and made no answer at all. The high priest put a second question to him. Are you the Christ, he said, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus. And remember when Moses at the burning bush asked God, what is your name? He said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. The high priest tore his robes. What need of witnesses have we now? He said. You heard the blasphemy. What is your finding? And they all gave their verdict. He deserves to die. Some of them started spitting at him and blindfolded him, began hitting him with their fists and shouting, play the prophet. And the attendants rained blows on him. Imagine somebody with their hands tied together and you're beating them on the face with your fists. Now Peter, the man with the sword, while Peter was down below in the courtyard, the one who would never betray him according to himself, one of the high priest's servant girls came up, a little thing. She saw Peter warming himself, stared at him and said, you too were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth. But he denied it. I do not know. I do not understand what you are talking about, he said. And he went off into the forecourt. I don't know what you're talking about, girl. The servant girl saw him and again started telling the bystanders, this fellow was one of them. But again he denied it. A little later, the bystanders themselves said to Peter, you are one of them, for sure, why you are a Galilean. Do you notice I don't have an Irish accent? Peter, you were one of them. You're a Galilean. But he started calling down curses on himself and swearing, I do not know the man you speak of. At that moment, the rooster crowed, the cock crowed for the second time. And Peter recalls how Jesus had said to him, before the cock crows twice, you will disown me 3 times. And he burst into tears. Later on, the rooster crows at the break of day for the resurrection of Christ. Amen.